So in this project, I'm going to create a framework that will contain our theme, and then the app will import that framework in order to use it. So to start, I'm going to create a new framework. I'll just call it app theme. And I'll save it in the same folder as this project. And then in order to get it into the app, I'm going to create a workspace. So I'm going to drag this in. And I have a whole video on this process of creating a framework and importing it as a module, Swift module. So I'll link that, which goes into more detail about the process. So now we have our framework, which is separate than the app. Now this is more of a preference thing. I tend to like it more as a separate framework than as being in the app, but you could just as easily add it to your app directly instead of doing a separate framework. So if you want, just do it in your project, but I like it more in a framework. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is create a file for the app theme. I'm going to import UIKit. So I'm basically just going to take that protocol we created in the last video and build off of that. So take all of this, bring it in here, make these public. For now, we're not going to do the fonts. I'm just going to do the color for this video. So we'll take out this as well. Actually, I'll take out all of this for now. Just use that as an example. So for the theme, we want to build it all in UIKit because, as I explained in the last video, if we make it in UIKit, we could always convert it to SwiftUI. But if we build it in SwiftUI from the start, we can't really convert it back to UIKit. So the base is going to be in UIKit terms, and then we'll just wrap that for SwiftUI, and it'll be really easy. But for now, it's just UIKit. So we'll make the protocol. I'm going to call it theme provider. And then our class will actually be called app theme. So I'll take this color function. I'm going to rename it to adaptive color so that we know that this is a color that changes in order to match dark mode and high contrast. So we'll make this public, and instead of returning a color, we're just going to return UI color. And that means our color style is also going to need to be public. Okay, so then our class is also going to be public. Call it app theme. And we're going to make it conform to this protocol, theme provider. So if I switch to the app theme target and build, it's going to fail because we need to provide this function. Okay, so for now I'm just going to fatal error. And the way that I'm going to do my colors is by using named colors from a color asset. So I'm going to create a new folder. We'll call it colors. And I'm going to move that color style here, that enum. All right, and then I'm also going to create a assets folder, which is going to contain our colors, or asset catalog it's called. We'll just call this color scheme. And right now we only have one color, which is background primary. We'll add that in. Okay, and for now, we'll do this white color, and dark appearance, we'll do a darker color. Not going to do totally black, but maybe like a darker gray. And then for this, maybe we'll even do more of like an off-whitish, just so that we can see that our high contrast colors are working. So I'll probably change these later to some nicer colors, but for now, this will work. And right now it's set for light and dark, and then we could also add in high contrast. So for the high contrast, we'll make this one just pure white. And for dark, we'll make it pure black. Just so it'll raise up the contrast a bit. Okay, so we have background primary. Maybe we'll even add one more for text primary. Which is pretty much going to be the opposite of these colors. So in a light appearance, we have this light background, so we're going to want a darker text color. So we'll do a darker gray too. And then when it's on this, we could do just white. We'll add high contrast again. And since white is already white, we don't have to change it, and we'll just make this pure black in high contrast mode. We'll add another case for that color. And then we were going to want to be able to load these colors, so I'm going to do an extension on color style. And it's just going to load and return an optional UI color. So what we're going to do, what we need to do is we need to get the bundle in order to load these colors. So how I'm going to do that is just define a global variable for our bundle. And we'll base it off of the app theme. Just build real quick. Okay, so now we have access to the bundle. We could return colors. So we return a named color by the initializer. And since we're in a module, we need to provide the bundle, or else it's going to fail to load. So in order to get the name, we're just going to have it as the raw value of this enum. So whatever the case is, whatever the name of the case is, needs to match the name in our assets catalog, which I have a video that I'll link that goes over this whole process, but I'm not going to go into detail right now. So we have the raw value, we have the bundle, it's defined globally, and then I'm going to use just the current in here. And this should give me an error because this is iOS 13 only, so we'll do a check. And then otherwise, we'll just provide it with no. So that should build. And then we'll add some unit tests to make sure that our colors are actually loading. And this will be able to cover all our colors because we're gonna make color style case iterable. So first I just need to make sure we're importing the module app theme. Okay, so with enums you could set case iterable, which will create an array of all the cases. which is good for our unit test because then we could just loop over that array. So color style, let's build real quick. Okay, so color style dot all cases. I don't know why my autocomplete isn't working, but for now I should be able to figure this out. So for each should give us a closure with the asset. We'll call it style. Then we'll create the color from that load function. And then we'll assert that it's not nil. And if it is, we'll have a message saying unable to load. Okay, let's run this test and just see that our colors are loading. So we get the green check mark. So as I mentioned before, if we don't use the bundle, it will fail. So if I just make this nil for both of these and run these tests, we'll see that it's not going to work. So that's why we need to specify the bundle. Otherwise, I think it looks like in the app bundle, but it's not there. So for here, now we know it's working. So I'm going to restart my Xcode because autocomplete didn't work. And for whatever reason, Xcode has a ton of issues, but as long as you quit it and open it up again, it'll work. So be right back as I quit and come back to Xcode. Okay, so after restarting, now I get autocomplete back again. So no idea why that happens occasionally, but whenever it does, I just quit Xcode and come back, and then it's fine. So that's it for the unit test. Now let's make sure we return our color instead of a fatal error in here. And part of the reason why I like doing this in a framework is because it hides the implementation details of what's going on here. So in our app, we're never going to see this load function directly. It's only within our framework, which is unit tested. So the app never sees these little utility functions and everything. So in here, we're just going to call that load function, which we could even, well, yeah. So for right now, since we're using the color scheme and we know that it's handling dark mode and high contrast, we can ignore those two variables in our function just because all our colors are coming from the color scheme asset catalog. But we could also do it all manually and use these two booleans if we needed to. So that's why I like to have it here just in case. But since we're using the asset catalog, we don't really care about this. So we could just load directly from the color style. And since we know that this is covered by the unit test, we could force unwrap here safely. I mean, it's not safe, but we know that it's covered by our unit test, and this shouldn't ever fail. So now we have an adaptive color that should adapt to different preferences. So let's try that out real quick in our SwiftUI app. So for now, I'm going to just comment out all our planning so it doesn't interfere with our theme framework. Okay, so I'm going to create a new folder called theme. And yeah, I'm going to try and create the environment values that'll hold our theme. So first, I'll just create the theme itself. So we'll import our framework, which we need to add to the project first. Okay, so we'll import it. And then we'll create a theme variable. Call it app theme. And this probably is going to give us an error because I don't think I created a public initializer. So if I switch to the app target, this should give me an error. Yeah, it does. So our app theme, we need to add a public initializer, which is just empty for now. We're going to add stuff to that later, but we don't need it yet. Okay, so now our app builds. We have the theme. And I will try to create the environment that will hold it. So we'll do theme plus environment. Import SwiftUI. And we need to create a struct. Okay, so then we need a default value, which is going to be that protocol theme provider. So we need to import the framework. And then we'll use that global variable that we defined earlier. And then now we'll extend the environment values with our values. So it'll be theme, which is theme provider. The get will return self with our key, theme key. And the set will then just set the new value. That should be good for our environment. And then we could add that when our app loads. So our content view gets created here, and we could just send into the environment our theme. This isn't even really necessary because the default value is already this, but I like to have it just so we know that it's injected into the environment. So now all of our SwiftUI views should have access to that theme. So to access it, we do @environment with the key path, and now we'll be able to access it. So this was the system stuff. Now let's try using our first pseudocode here, which should fail because we changed the names a bit. So foreground color should be adaptive color. So we need to make this color theme adaptive color. The style is going to be text primary. And then now we need to get these other values. So I'll show the long way first, and then we'll build a ViewModifier that will streamline this process. So in order to get access to dark mode and prefers high contrast, those are also environment values that are provided by Apple. So for dark mode, that is the color scheme. So for now, I'll just do it here, but we're gonna pull this out and make it cleaner later. So the color scheme, let's see what values it is. It should just be like light and dark. Yeah, so it's only 2 values. Maybe they're going to add more someday, but for now it's just light and dark. So we could just return color scheme is dark. So that solves our first one. And then high contrast is, I gotta make this var. Kind of a weird name for high contrast. It's like color scheme contrast, I think. Yeah, I don't know why they named it that. So is high contrast is going to be similar. So the environment value is a optional. So we'll do a similar thing where color contrast is increased. So that means high contrast. So it's a bit messy and verbose right now, but we're going to clean that up. And then similarly for the background, I'll just copy paste and make this background primary. And we don't have our theme doing fonts yet, so let's just see if our colors change. So if we run this, so it's a little hard to see, but we can see a little bit of yellow for our background color here, which is what we wanted. And then if we play around with the values, we should see it adapts. So if we increase the contrast, that yellow goes away and the background goes to white, and our text color gets a bit darker to black. So without high contrast, it kind of looks a little dim because our font color is like a light or darker gray, and then we have a yellowish background. But then if we increase contrast, it just goes to white and black. And then with dark mode, we see it adjust properly just as the system adapting does. So that's good. And if we turn contrast off, we see that our color is now a little bit lighter. So that's perfect. Everything's working as it should be. So I guess the next step would be to add a view modifier that makes this a little bit cleaner. So down here we see that with this adaptive foreground color, adaptive background color. So I'm going to add that to the theme folder. So we'll do So in order to do this, we could just make some view modifiers, which are pretty cool. So I'll do a color modifier struct. We'll just make this private because we don't even need to expose this to the app. So color modifier, which is going to be a view modifier. And what I'll do is I'll create an enum so that we could use this color modifier for different properties on the view. So like there's foreground color and background color. Instead of creating separate view modifiers for both, I'm just going to create an enum so that they all live in the same modifier. So what do we want to call this enum? I guess I'll call it placement. So we have foreground and background for now. So when we initialize this, we want that placement so we know where this has to go. I'm going to make this a view builder function and then switch on that placement. Okay. So that's one thing you could do inside of a view builder. You could use switch cases, which is pretty cool. The compiler doesn't like it that much, I could tell, because things get a little wonky if you have a really complex function going on. But for something simple like this, the switch statement's fine. So what we'll do is we'll take those environment values that we had in our view and just move them to the view modifier. And then basically just do the same exact thing we did before. So if it's the foreground, we're going to want to set the foreground color. So it'll be content.foreground color. And we'll do I'll just copy it from where we used it before. So here we have the foreground color. And then instead of setting text primary, we're going to want to be able to send that in. So I'll also move these vars. Okay, so that's the foreground, and then the background. Boom. So we don't want it to always be text primary, so we'll add that as an argument. So we'll do style, which will be color style. That means we need to import our framework. So instead of doing text primary, we just do style. And I'll just clean this up to make it a little bit nicer. Okay, so now we have a view modifier that'll set our foreground color and background color. In order to use it, we'll just make an extension on view. And for now, it'll just be two different functions that we defined in pseudocode earlier. So we had adaptive foreground color and adaptive background color. So let's add those in. And that's going to take a style, which is our color style, and return some view. And that view is just going to be self with the view modifier. So color modifier, style is the style, and the placement will be foreground. And we'll do the same thing just for background. Cool, so now our pseudocode that we wrote should actually work. Other than the font. Cool. So now if we run this, it should work just as the verbose version did. We see these colors match. If we set it to dark mode, they adapt. Same with high contrast. They adapt. So same exact code, just in a view modifier, which makes it much cleaner and succinct than having to grab these environment values and these computed properties and everything. So this just makes it a lot easier. And similarly, we can clean up the SwiftUI font conversion a little bit, because in here we're creating a color and then sending in the UI color, which is, that's fine, but it's a little bit annoying to always have to do that. So we could add that to our app theme. We'll just add a public extension to app theme. And it'll be basically the same as the other one, except it's going to return a color instead of a UI color. So return color, and we'll just call that same function that returns the UI color. So style is dark mode and prefers high contrast. Add this 2 new lines. We get a bunch of errors because we're not importing SwiftUI yet. So I'll conditionally import it just because this module goes back to iOS 11. So we'll just make sure it's possible to import SwiftUI first. And import it. And then since SwiftUI is iOS 13 only, we'll mark this whole thing as iOS 13. And that should fix all our issues here. So that's not needed. Okay, so now we have wrapped our original implementation, the UIKit implementation, with a little SwiftUI wrapper. So now in our app, instead of having to do that conversion, we could just call the theme. Same with this one. So now if it's going to give us issues because we haven't built the framework yet. So if we build the framework and then now build the app, still is not working. Now why? Oh, because we did an extension on the class and we really want it to be an extension on the protocol, so on theme provider. Now if we build, it should be good to go. So build, yep, now it works. So if we run it again, now we don't have to do these manual conversions to SwiftUI. It's just part of our framework. So that's it for this video. I say that's it. This is a long one. Just 2 simple colors. We're going to build off that in some future videos. So in the next video, I'll probably add 2 fonts similar to how this video was, just to lay the foundation. And then after that, we'll build some simple UI that's like common in apps. Maybe it'll be a sign up form or a login form or something that can demonstrate what this theme, like what the purpose of this theme is. So that's it for this video.